to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch-Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Larry Moklestad, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, currently retired, but formerly athletic director for 1 year at ADM, and you would know him more when he was the AD at Boone High School. Welcome to the podcast, Larry.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. It's a nice opportunity to visit with you. This will be a good experience for all of us, I hope.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience in the U.S. and across the world where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
All right, a little bit of my background. I graduated from high school in 1975 from a small community in northern Iowa, a little tiny place, graduating class of 33 students. So it was a small town. I was a farm kid. From there, it was a nice opportunity, though. Had a lot of close friends, and we all played sports in a different time. You know, you played football when it's football season, and we played basketball, and then we played baseball, and there were really no camps per se in northern Iowa at that time, and your competition didn't have them either. So it was just a really nice experience growing up, and you were just playing truly against other kids, all different levels of competition, but everybody was on the same playing field. After that, I decided to go to Iowa State University, and went there for a year. And then all of a sudden, when I was there about halfway through that year, I decided, I don't really know what I'm doing at Iowa State. I was not big enough to play D1 football. So, and I wanted to coach. And I thought, well, how am I ever going to get a coaching job if I don't go and play and participate and get some more knowledge? So at that time, you could not transfer from D1 to D3 without losing a year of eligibility. Since that's been changed. So I had to go to a junior college in Iowa for a year and play baseball and football. And then I ended up going back to a D3 school my junior and senior year in college. So I went to 3 different colleges in the first 3 years, but I always knew I was going to transfer. So everything worked out fine. And the positive thing is I got to be around more coaches than I would have normally, how to do some things and how not to do some things. So it ended up being a real positive experience for me. And I met some really interesting people through that process. And then I got my master's at Iowa State University, met some interesting people there. One of the gentlemen that was one of my mentors there was a head track coach at Utah at one time, at Idaho, a guy named Dave Stotler, who was an All-American football player at one of the Illinois schools. And then he was really an interesting person during that stage. But my first teaching job and coaching job was in 1979. I went to a small school in central Iowa called Radcliffe, where there I taught physical education, also taught health as a head football coach at the age of 21, also the head boys track coach. And at that time, at that size school, I was also the middle school track coach because we practiced in the middle of the school day. They had a prep period in the middle of the school day, which is very unique, and they don't do that anymore in Iowa. But I did that, and then coached softball in the summertime. And then after 2 years at Radcliffe, superintendent approached me and asked if I wanted to coach the girls basketball team as well. So my plate was full. For the final 4 years there, I was coaching girls basketball. And for your audience, Iowa and Oklahoma at that time had 6-on-6 girls basketball, which is something probably it's hard to gather, but you had three ladies on each end of the floor, and they could never cross half court. It was 3 forwards and 3 guards, and it was a fast, dynamic game, and it was fun to coach. And I was lucky I had some nice players and a real good assistant coach, because I was a football and track guy, but it ended up being a positive experience. After 6 years, I wanted to see if I could go to a little bit higher level, so I went to a 3A football and track job in a school called Hampton-Dumont, which was a nice step up for me and a nice opportunity. They previously had not had a lot of success in football. I think they'd had 7 winning seasons in the previous 50 years. So it was quite a challenge to get that program turned around, but it was fun. And I was there for 9 years in that capacity. And then the final 6 years I was there, I was the football coach, track coach, taught 6 out of 8 periods a day, and was athletic director. So it was it was a busy time. But when you don't know what you don't know, it was a great job. I enjoyed it, but it was way too much on somebody's plate at that time. Then plus we ran the weight room all year round, so it was busy. I had a wonderful wife that was very supportive, because when we started out at Hampton, we had a 5, 3, and 1-year-old daughters, so it was a busy time. And then after that, I at the age of 37, I had a big career choice to make. I'd thought I'd always coach football till I retired, but I decided at the age of 37, and after 15 years of coaching and teaching, I had an opportunity to go to a very large 3A school called Boone. And I was going to stay there for 5 years and see what happened, and then maybe move on. But the 5 years ended up 24. And I stayed there as activities director for 24 years, from 1985 to 2018. Great experience, great community, great coaches. We had a wonderful time. It's where everything came together for us as far as various offices, both at the state and the national level. So that's my past, and it's been a real fun journey, and it went way too fast, as we all know as we get older.
That's fascinating. Thanks for sharing. I'm interested. You talked about being from a small town when you grew up. So was there much? You talked about playing to kids of all ages. Was there much of a little league in youth sports? Did you get a chance? Or
yeah, we had little league sports, but we didn't start until the age of 10, which is that's a unique experience. But we started playing what was called Pee Wee baseball at the age of 10. We played midget baseball when we got right before high school, and we didn't get to play football or basketball till 7th grade. So that was the extent of it. We also had this is really small town Iowa countryside, but we had 4-H basketball, which was kind of like club basketball. We probably played that when we started, when we were about 10, 11 years old as well. So it was great communities. We had a lot of fun, and very tight-knit farming communities, and good people, and good work ethic was established, because you worked hard and then you got to go play, and it worked out really well, and found a lot of good values through that. And the people were really, it was a different time.
interesting. Let me ask you a follow-up about girls
Sure.
basketball. We would have coached girls basketball at the same time in the 80s.
Yeah.
The difference being you coached the 6-person, the 3 on each side, and I coached just a 5-on-5. I'm fascinated as to how that was, because I'd always heard they did that in Iowa, and I've never really talked to someone who actually coached the game. And so how different is it? Obviously,
it's drastically different. You were limited to 2 dribbles, and it was amazing how far girls could go with 2 dribbles. If you touched the ball, if I was outside of the lane and I touched the ball, it was an automatic foul, just touching the ball. If I was in the guarding position, once you were in the lane, you could do whatever you wanted to. When a basket was made, the official under the basket would take the ball, throw it to his partner at half court, and then he would throw it to the forward for the other team right at the center line, and then they would attack to go score. It was a dominated game if you had a large post player, because you could position them down low, and you're forced, there's not much things as with 3 people, there's not much zone defense. So you had some interesting matchups. And if you had a solid post player that somebody could shoot from the perimeter, you had to pick your poison. If you doubled their big girl, then they'd always kick it out, and a good shooter would hurt you. So you're really forced to play strict man-to-man defense and just hope for the best. But it was a wild game from the standpoint of swings, momentum swings, similar to volleyball. You know how kids get on runs in volleyball? You'd see that a lot in this 6-on-6 thing. And the crowds were amazing. Everybody's involved. At the time, the state tournament was held in an auditorium called Vets Auditorium in Des Moines, and they would always sell out. 14,000 people would go to the 6-on-6 tournament for 3 days in a row. It was a huge thing. Just a different game, a lot of fun, and it was a amazing how talented the kids were and how far they could go, like I said earlier, with 2 dribbles and crossover moves. And it was really, you should pull up an old, if you could find that in the archives, maybe on YouTube, and find one of those. It's a fascinating thing. I think the only difference was with Oklahoma. I believe once you scored, then their guards would have to take the ball out underneath the basket and bring it up the floor. But they were still half court as well. But we're in Iowa, we threw it the up official and we only had to traverse half the court. I think in Oklahoma, they had to go all the way up.
So you could press in Oklahoma.
Yes, you could, with your forwards on their guards.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to kind of, it's interesting. You know, the year I was at ADM, we had a group come in and play a simulated, it was some ladies in their 40s and 50s that had played 6-on-6. And the gym was packed. It was just a delight to watch them play a 6-on-6 game. And for the young people, you know, basically 30 and younger, they'd never seen such a thing. And the crowd just loved it. And so did the people that were playing.
When did Iowa stop doing the 6?
I'd say it was probably either 89, 90, or 91, right in there. And the ironic part, you know, big schools played it too. And when I was at Radcliffe, that small little school had combined, it was called Hubbard Radcliffe. And the ironic part of all this, Mark, was the last state champion in 6-on-6 was Hubbard Radcliffe.
Really?
Brian coach, yeah. But they had a Division I basketball player named Lisa Brinkmeyer that started at Drake, and it was a Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union vice president or executive director. Wonderful lady. She had a tragic thing, and she just passed about 6 months ago because of cancer, but she was a fantastic player on that team.
That's incredible. What I know about Iowa basketball, obviously I know Caitlin, the top scorer in women's, but I assume she's an Iowa product, right? A local girl that's playing at Iowa.
Yeah, she played at Dowling High School, parochial school in Des Moines. And I got to see her play twice in high school. And, you know, you knew she was special because she could score really whenever she wanted to, but she was such a wonderful young lady. She would pass almost to a fault. She was very kind, shared the ball, but just kind of like now, nobody could really guard her. She had a great combination of size and speed, and she was extremely mature. Just a special athlete. And you've probably seen, she was a soccer athlete and could have played soccer at the highest level too, I think. And she played in the John Deere Open, which is held in Moline, the golf tournament this year with some of the pros, pro-am. She's a heck of a golfer too. She's an athlete.
Well, she's got that Steph Curry range.
She does.
Shooting the rock. I'm telling you what, she can play. So that's fascinating.
And as you know, and I'm sure you've been to the games, NBA, college, TV is amazing to watch, but it really doesn't do it justice like when you're there. And we were fortunate enough to go a couple weeks ago to one of their games in Iowa City, and to see her in person, some of the passes she makes, and in the mood of the game and the atmosphere, it's quite amazing. And her teammates are really good too. But it's quite a show. And every ticket's been a sellout all year at Iowa, and on the road they've been sellouts. It's been quite a quite a zoo actually. But she's handled it extremely well.
Excellent. Let's have you talk for a minute about some of the mentors you've had in your life that have made a difference when you were younger and professionally as an AD.
Well, as far as I had a couple of fantastic high school coaches that really kind of guided me as far as coaching philosophy. When I got in the business as coaching, our football coach was a tremendous guy and a very talented and a very knowledgeable guy. And he helped me. I know the summer before I became a head football coach at Radcliffe, I went up they had a summer cottage up in Minnesota. I went up there and spent some days with him, and he was very gracious and helped me out so much. Then we had a high school baseball coach that also was fantastic. And he taught us so much, not only about baseball, but about life, how to treat people, how to be competitive, that drive, what it took to be really good. And I was very lucky that way. And that's pretty much for a high school thing. And then in college, like I said earlier, I was around some really interesting college coaches, and then I was around some that I wouldn't want to model them, as far as they're a little rough around the edges, I guess is the best way to say it. But you know what? It's a great learning experience when you get you go from a real hard-nosed person that's just wild and crazy and is kind of got a little bit of a colorful language to converse to another one that's very, very devout Christian type situation that would never yell at you and just motivate you with knowledge. So it was kind of an interesting way you go. It was a 180. You went from the dark side to the light
Sure.
in those experiences. That was really good. And then from an athletic director standpoint, I was very fortunate when I got involved in the state of Iowa. We have some tremendous, as every place in the country, and as well, as well too, your mentors, Mark, some fantastic gentlemen that were kind of the staples of the Iowa High School Athletic Directors Association. Started in 1968. And some of the old guard were still there when I started out, and they were so gracious with their knowledge. And instead of treating you like, well, you're just a young rookie and we don't really need to have any time for you, they embraced us, a whole bunch of us, and mentored us, took us under their wing. I think they realized that we were going to be down the road, the future of the organization, like we now have young ones taking over for our situation, and we hopefully mentored them in a positive way. So I was very fortunate to have 5 or 6 guys that were just, I'd call them top shelf administrators that really did it the right way, and were great people to follow their example.
Excellent. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question here, Larry.
Sure.
What's the biggest failure or disappointment that you've had in life, and what did you learn from it?
Well, from a coaching standpoint, it's kind of a selfish one, but my biggest disappointment, and seems kind of selfish, but I feel so bad that we never won a state championship when I was a football coach. We got to the semifinals and could never get into that championship game. And one year was really a tough one because we had 4 starters. We played 9 football games to qualify for the playoffs in Iowa. And the 8th game of the season, we lost 4 starters. And all of them were all conference or all state players. And in a small school, that's tough to overcome. And we still won our 9th game. We won our first 2 playoff, got to the semifinals and the playoffs, and then got beat. So that's those what ifs. So that was just a disappointment. I felt worse for the kids and for our coaching staff, obviously, but I felt tough for the kids because it was a special group. And then the other after that, you always want to just try to go to clinics, try to broaden your depth of knowledge. So what could you have done differently? And I always believed in going to things, from the standpoint of clinics. Got to be a clinician speaker on several occasions, actually. But Bernie Saga, who was a famous athletic administrator, our executive director of the state of Iowa, he always said, you always need to keep going to places to sharpen your tools. He was always sharpen your tools. So that's what I always tried to do, is to always get better as a coach or as a athletic administrator, because the day we stop learning is the day we regress and we don't do well. So there's always a better way to do it. And I was never afraid to ask for help. You need help and surround yourself with the best people. Currently, I'm teaching 12 weekends a year at our community college here in Ankeny, where we live currently. And I teach coaching theory. And I always tell them, there's a slide I've got in one of my PowerPoints, first-class leaders surround themselves with first-class assistance or help, and they're not threatened by that. So that being said, what I mean by that is, take, for instance, let's say we were coaches or athletic administrators, and we were going in position to hire an assistant or administrative assistant. I'd want the best and brightest. I'm not going to be intimidated by them. If they're smarter than I am, better than I am, that's fantastic, because it's a team atmosphere. And the more knowledge base that we can gather from them, the better off we are. And I know second-class leaders, the other part of that side is second-class leaders surround themselves with third-class people so they can dominate them and act like they're the smartest person in the room. And I think that's such a tragedy sometimes. And maybe we have seen those types of people, maybe much more in the coaching realm, where they're a little insecure and paranoid, and they want people that don't, heaven forbid they have a voice in the program.
Mm.
And I'm just the opposite of that. If we've got valuable ideas and valuable tools, hey, it's all about doing the best we can as a group. So you just should never be threatened by that, but embrace it and hope to have somebody make you look great, and they'll make themselves look great. And that's what it's all about.
Well said. Let me go off on a side tangent here for a
Sure.
minute. You and I found this out obviously when we served on the board together, but you and I share basically the love of an author, the same author, Clive Cussler, and I'm just interested because I've obviously read all of his books, and I know you have, and I just find it so fascinating. So I'm just wondering I know how I became interested. I'm just wondering how you became interested basically in Clive.
I started that out earlier. I think I love adventure type novels and things and fiction, and the characters were fascinating in the early books. And once I read the first couple, three, I just got hooked. And they're a fantastic read. Now they've branched off into other characters as well, but
Right.
it's a fascinating ride, and it's talk about a long journey. Mark, do you have any idea? What do you think the first book Clive wrote was? Was it in the 80s, late 80s? I'm not sure.
It's before. I know that the Pacific Vortex apparently was his first book, but it was no. The Mediterranean Caper was his first book, but it wasn't published until 3 or 4 of his other books had been published, and then so it's got to be, my goodness, maybe even the late 70s.
Yeah, it's quite a run, and they just it's a fascinating series, and it's just they're always a fun read. And the thing I really like about them, the plot, the plots are always very good, and the creativity is great. And the thing I love fast reads, and I love books where I'm in it. I can't put it down because I just can hardly wait to see how it finishes and how they weave it all together. It's always good stuff. And his fascination of cars is always, I have a car, I love cars, so that's fun. And the characters, the perlmutter or the guy with a fine taste for wine and food. He's always an interesting tangent. It's just always fun.
Right. Yeah, and that's fascinating. It's and part of reading all those Cussler books, along with Tom Clancy's, are what actually got me, I guess, motivated to write the 2 novels that I've written. So that's it's just interesting because I haven't met a whole lot of people. I mean, some people say, yeah, I read him, but I know that we had that connection early on.
Absolutely.
So
and I've read all the Tom Clancy books too. And it's funny. I've got 2 new authors too, and I'm hooked on, but I've run out of material because they're. I guess I've got one more book. They started in 2004. Brad Thor is an interesting read. He's a great author, New York Times guy. He's got a central character that's just fascinating reading. It's really good if you like military type things. And what's scary is the stuff they wrote about starting in 2004 is so current in today's world events. I know we're off here on a tangent, but he's a good author. And then the other one, they had a movie called The Gray Man, but there's a Gray Man book series by an author. His last name is Graney, Greney, and that's a fascinating series as well. And those have been my last 2 jumps after Clive slowed down a bit.
Yeah, excellent. Let's have you talk for a minute, getting back to the podcast. Let's have you talk for a minute about your journey with the Iowa High School Athletic Directors Association. You mentioned some of the early guys that got you involved, and then from there, how you got involved with the NIAAA, and of course, eventually on the NIAAA board.
Yeah, I tell you what, the journey on the athletic side of the Iowa part was great. You start out, if you want to become, there's 5 different districts in Iowa, and you can be the president of the district, you can be the secretary, you can be the vice president. But from there, if you so choose, and if you're nominated, and if they're interested, you want to go through the chairs to become eventually the president of the athletic organization Iowa, which is Iowa High School Athletic Directors Association. And you start out it's a 3-year run. You start out and you run against various people, and if you are voted in, you're the second VP. Then the following year, you're the first VP, and then the third year, you're the president. And then, of course, the best year is always the year after, when you're the past president. You just get you get to just hang out and help out with decisions, but the pressure is often. As second VP, our convention here is usually really awesome. It's extremely well attended. It's a big deal. And you're really charged with putting that kind of together as second VP. So it's a very important role. And then as first vice president, you're in charge with getting a lot of the speakers and all of the mini sessions that we have, tons of them. And it's a busy time. Then as president, it's just pulling all the pieces together and make sure you delegate and make sure you do the right things. And then after all of that was done, I was fortunate enough, I was a representative for the state of Iowa. This is probably back, probably in the early 90s, I would guess. And it was a Section 4 rep. One of I was one of the 5 states in the Section 4. And I got to go to Chicago, and I took my daughter with me. It was just in the infancy of me kind of being involved in the chairs, and we ended up in a hotel with some other people. And one was Frank Kowaleski, who at that time was the executive director of the NIAAA in its infancy. And I think I was kind of like a duck out of water there. I just sat back and I listened, and I was listening to these people, and it was an interesting thing. And came home and tried to get more involved. But what really spearheaded it was the opportunity to get elected and represent Section 4 in the NIAAA and serve with you, of course, on the board. And I'll tell you, that was it was a highlight of my athletic director's career from the standpoint. That was some of the most fun times. And the special part about it was the people and the friendships and the meeting like-minded, driven people that were there for the good of their programs, their kids, and their coaches. And we got treated, as you know, Mark, we got treated like royalty when we got there. We got to sit in. They heard our voices. We got to enact policy, got involved. And, that's all you can ask for. It wasn't one of those things where you go to a meeting and you don't feel like you're doing anything from an input standpoint, but it was fantastic. And then the other part of that I really enjoyed was, it's a 12-person board. And every year, 4 people go off and 4 people come on. So, we had that opportunity to serve and to meet 8 additional people over that second, third year. And it's just a fantastic experience, and what a growth opportunity for all of us. And you get invigorated, and I can't say enough about the quality of those people that were chosen to represent their various states and regions and districts. Just everybody was top notch. It was really a fantastic experience.
Thanks for sharing that. Let me ask you a couple more follow-ups. Any stories come to mind of your 3 years on the board? I think fondly of course, the Valpo bus. When I say the Valpo bus, everyone else they have no idea what I'm talking about. But stories like that, I'm wondering if there's any stories that come to mind that you might share with our audience.
Well, I tell you what, she's a sweetheart, Patty Conrad, who's the office manager basically for the office in Indianapolis. I think I used to torment her just because I have a terribly bad sweet tooth, and I always make sure she stocked up the fridge in the back room with cookies and ice cream. And I know Rich Bouchard, who we know real well, Rich and I would be the ice cream junkies, and we'd always have fun. But that was always fun. And we'd always go out in the evening occasionally to those big social event things that I remember we had a John Denver type center in the park on a beautiful night. Right. Where we sat in a huge grassy park and
Conroe on the Prairie. Yeah.
And I know one time we went to see the horses run, and everything was always top notch. And I love to eat, which to is kind of a detriment to me right now in this state. But going out and eating was always fun because different things, and it was always a lot of fun. And there were a lot of stories. I remember talking with I can't think of the gentleman's name right now. It eludes me, but he was a friend of Johnny Unitas. And I remember one night riding back on the bus, he got into a neat conversation about. I mean, he knew Johnny Unitas very, very well, and it was fun listening to stories about Johnny Unitas kind of off the football field and what kind of a person he was. And I never would have met anybody like that had we not had that experience. And I remember a couple other fun things we did. We were at Bruce Whitehead's. You probably remember this. We were at Bruce Whitehead's house one evening for supper, and there was a new construction across the street, and
Yeah.
it wasn't open, but Tommy Marshall and I, Tommy is a great guy. We decided
Tommy Marshall.
Tommy Marshall, yes, yes. We thought we better go explore the house, so
Yeah.
we snuck over there and went in there and we were building inspectors, but that was a lot of fun. And then the neat thing else on the board, we got a chance to not only be with Bruce, who was fantastic, but then when Mike Blackburn took over, it was a seamless transition. And then as we were on the board, who we would have never thought, but he was so passionate, and what a great choice. Phil Risen just came in on the board our last year, and what a great human being Phil is, and a dear friend. And lo and behold, he ended up taking over for Mike. So quite an interesting transition, those three amigos.
Exactly. Let's have you share that special moment now from the last conference when you were inducted into the NIAAA Hall of Fame. That's it's an exclusive club to be on the board, but I would say a more exclusive club to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So talk about that for a moment.
I'll tell you what, that you talk about humbling experiences, and none of us ever get any award, regardless of the scope of the award or whatever it was. We always question, well, did we really deserve it, and were we really worthy? And you look at the thousands of athletic directors and activities directors across our great country, and you think, wow, to be even thought of or chosen to have that high of an honors is, like I said, very humbling. And I so appreciative of the state of Iowa for nominating me for the first part, but also for the screening committee in Indianapolis to allow me that opportunity to have such a wonderful honor. And you're right, it is a select group, and I was very excited from the standpoint because Rich Bouchard was in this group as well, who's a good friend, and then Greg Smith from Wisconsin, who we've known for a number of years. And it's always fun to go in with some people that you already know too. And it was an incredible night. We were lucky enough. We brought our family down with us, and we spent the time down there in Orlando and had basically a mini vacation with family prior to Christmas. And that whole national convention, I couldn't stress it enough for any activity director out there. You need to attend it, because there's just nothing like it. The experience is incredible. And I know the conference luncheon, the day before, on the Monday at noon, every time they do that national anthem with all the pageantry and the beautiful screenshots, I'm not kidding you. Every time I get teared up, it just gets to me. And it's just part of the deal. And then that whole convention is fantastic. And, as ADs, we put together a lot of things and a lot of different tournaments and a lot of different events, but for them to pull that off at that scope of that level, unless you've done that, it's really an incredible feat that they put all that together, and it's done with such precision and professionalism. It's really amazing, and a credit to everyone that does it. It's I just love the event, and getting back to that night, it was very, very rewarding, but it was extremely, like I said, humbling, and it's just an honor to even be included with any of those other people that are on that list.
Thanks for sharing that. Back when you were working, both of us, what was the favorite part of your job back when you were the full-time AD?
You know what, I make it real simple, and I tell this to other athletic directors and to coaches. I said, we had the best job in the world. We're in a nice situation. We're getting paid well to watch kids play sports. And you know what, if you just keep that philosophy, it's the greatest job in the world. And I know there's a lot of challenges with officials, parents, budget cuts, all of that stuff, but it's nice just to keep it, in essence, just keep it simple and just be there for the sheer enjoyment of what an opportunity we have to be able to facilitate the growth of those young student athletes and to mentor coaches. When I got out of coaching, it changed. Now we're coaching the coaches, and that's a great opportunity. And I really love that. And, between the two of us, I can't imagine, we had 84 coaches on our staff when I left Boone. We had 84 coaches at different levels. And, think of the interviews that we've had, the amount of people through, I was an AD for 31 years. and in education for 40. I can't imagine how many interviews we conducted and stuff. And the people that you meet, and you just try to do it in a positive way. And it was a wonderful ride, and I loved it. And the other thing that was neat is had the opportunity to see your own children go up and through the high school thing and play. And it doesn't matter if they're in the band, the chorus, the orchestra, or the quarterback on the football team. It's a fun ride to watch your kids go through that as well, and to do well.
Yeah, very well said. Let's finish up with a couple of questions. The first one, Larry, being, I need Larry's 2 suggestions for a brand new AD in order to be successful, and they would have to follow these 2 suggestions in order to have that success. What would your 2 suggestions be?
The first one would be, do not be bashful or shy or afraid to ask someone that you respect. Pick their brain. Go out there and be secure enough in your abilities to go out and try to find out, what are the progressive athletic directors doing? What makes it special for them? Use them as a wealth of knowledge for you, because we're all like sponges, and we're all the same from the standpoint of, we always try to do whatever we can to become better and to grow. So the biggest thing I would be, get out and get involved with other athletic directors. Now, that being said, you need to get involved at your state, local level, and go to any type of clinic that you can to further your trade. Get involved at the state convention, get involved with the chairs as soon as you feel that you're at that point of your career where you can become helpful for your state organization, and then pursue anything in the national level, because that's how you grow. So the number one thing is to lean on the elders, lean on the wisdom of others, and find that. The other thing is, I really think that your state associations can be helpful to you too. Don't be afraid of them. I know some athletic directors feel, well, if I call them and say something, well, then they'll treat me in a negative light. And I don't think there's anything farther from the truth of that. We have to remember as activities directors that they're there to help us, and they're there to help us grow. So don't be afraid to talk to your executive, your directors, the underlings of those organizations for anything. So if you have questions, it's always better to find out an eligibility rule or something that could get you at your school or yourself or a young person in trouble because you might not have been aware of the rule, but establish a base of knowledge with them. And like I said earlier, network, get out there and find out what's going on. And I guess the last thing is, for me, I know this is probably more than 2, but if you're not willing to step out there and be a motivated person and being there for the right reasons, probably activities director is not a spot for you, because you've got a tremendous opportunity to change the lives of so many people, and you want to do it the right way. And if you're just there to think you've got a title and you can skate through it, not be organized and do a sloppy job, you're going to fail, and it's not for you. But it's a great occupation, and I wholly endorse anyone that's interested in athletics to pursue it and enjoy the ride, because it goes fast, like we said earlier, and it's a fantastic career. And I wouldn't have changed a thing.
Very well said. Thanks so much for sharing. We'll finish with this. Larry, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
To be honest, I think you covered it extremely well. Thanks. I don't know what else I can add other than the fact that, on a side note, all of us, you have to have a great support system. And I think both of us, and I know the people we know, our spouses are really critical to our success, as well as our children. They have to understand, there's going to be some sacrifices. You can't go to everything of your own children. And they've got to be supportive, because we're not home a lot at nights. And I was very fortunate to have a very sympathetic, I guess would be the best way, a supportive wife. And I think all of us need that in that occupation. So I think that's huge. And I've been blessed by having a wonderful spouse that's been very supportive.
Very well said. On that note, that wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our guest today has been Larry Moklestad, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, retired, but former AD at ADM and Boone High Schools in Iowa. Larry, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Mark, I really appreciate the time, and good luck to all you future activities directors out there.
Thank you. For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.